pleasant tour.
E fu un bel viaggio.
So I flew around one day, and I shined my light towards the top, and there, I saw a body in there.
Ha illuminato la parte alta di questo contenitore e ho visto un corpo.
And it was small. First I thought it was a child, but then when I lifted more and looked at the head was strange. It was big. Compared to the size of the body, it was large. And it had two slanted black eyes. These bodies were sent, there were 6 of them.
6 di questi corpi quindi furono trasportati via terra.
They were sent in 3 trucks overland.
3 diversi furgoni.
Because the estimate was if one truck rents, the rest we still have the other 2.
Perché l'idea è...
I had a bunch of fiber optics that came from a flying saucer. I didn't know what they were. I didn't know if they were wires, tubes, filaments, what they were.
Quando lui prese in mano questo reticolo, un groviglio di fibre ottiche, non sapeva di che cosa si trattava.
But one day by accident, I happened to hold them in my hand, I closed my hand, and they started to glow. There was an instinct that we had something important. The decision was made, give it to industry.
Quindi la decisione fu...
The metal was about...
Un pezzo di metallo era di queste dimensioni.
But the atoms were aligned in it.
Ma il problema è che gli atomi di questo metallo erano allineati diversamente da tutto quello che noi conoscevamo.
You couldn't scratch it, you couldn't bend it, we couldn't even shoot
Non si
bullets.
poteva graffiare, piegare né bruciare.
So I got the team and I went out with my team. Yet, he told the general also said, this will be bigger than Los Alamos if we can do.
Semplicemente questo pezzo di metallo, il commento, dopo i primi studi da parte di...
And during that period, the NKVD in those days
NKVD, right.
was coming into Rome, agitating. So I started arresting them. Things like that came out, and they've caused me a lot of difficulty.
Well, Colonel, you raise in this book, you know, without any, no matter what anybody thinks of the book, you're raising extraordinarily important issues. The more important the issue, the more documentation. But these are crucial issues. These are not.
They are
you see, in UFO material, we're in a situation here where the debunkers are after us at all times.
Oh, sure.
The skeptics, the military, and so forth. And when I make a statement, I have to say, I got this from so-and-so. Here's a document, here's a letter that this person wrote me. Now, you may discard the letter, or you may discard my saying it came from so-and-so, but at least I'm offering the letter, the source, the name, whatever. And if you don't do that, and you simply, as it seems in the letter, in the book, that you had a lot of friends in the NKV, and they told you things, and you believed it.
No, I didn't have friends in the NKVD.
Yeah. Well, can I take a particular quote? You made the quote that Truman said, if Winchell finds out about this, in other words, our goose is cooked, or something to that phrase.
Well, you said that quite often.
Yeah, but I mean, you quote this as coming from the KGB, NKVD. Now, what you said, how do I know this? My friendship with the NKVD agents.
Well,
So I'm trying to find out who these people were.
Yeah.
Well, could you give me an example, just so I can get a sense of it, where you would be when you would have a conversation with one of these agents? I mean, would this be in a bar? Would this be...
There was at least 5 or 6 bars. One was in Arlington, Virginia. Another one was in Rockville. And there was about 3 or 4 in Washington, D.C. I would show up there every once in a while and sit down, and somebody would come and sit with me. Now, what they looked like, well, really they weren't what people say in the book, you know, with beards and this and that. They would look like ordinary Americans.
Right.
And I can't give you any description that makes them outstanding.
But just to follow this up, it would be very clear that they would have a tremendous aim in making you look down upon the president
Yeah.
and make you feel, in a certain sense, disloyal to the president.
Well,
that would be an obvious goal. I mean, they're trying to.
But they never succeeded.
Well, no, I'm not saying that
for
they
example-
succeeded. Of course not.
for
But they
example-
would be. But hear me out a second. They would want to sow dissension. I mean, obviously, that's what our agents
That's
did.
right.
Now, my point is, when they made a remark like that Truman said, and you quoted in the book, if Winchell finds out we've really had it, so on and so forth, and you said that came from the NKVD, why would you necessarily believe them, as opposed to
NKVD?
thinking that they're trying to...
Because I always ran checks on them, on who they were and what they were, their passports and so forth. I never took it on face value what they said to me. I went back to the Pentagon, to our files and our agents, and checked it out. And not only that, but most people didn't know this in those days, I was a great friend of J. Edgar Hoover's. We were very close. He wrote one of the few commendations on me that's in my file in the Pentagon yet. So I would go check it out. It wasn't that I ever took their word. Don't get me wrong. I never took their word at
you
face
don't
value.
mention in the
I would
book-
check it out many
Yeah.
times.
Well, you don't mention in the book that you actually checked out this. I mean, maybe you did,
That-
but
no, I
what you
don't. I
say
didn't.
is,
That's an intelligence process which I didn't want to, that I don't talk about.
well, it's not a big deal to say.
Well, in
See,
a way,
here's the thing.
In a way, to us, it was a big deal.
But let me put it this way. The war is now over
Yeah.
55 years.
I checked them.
Yeah.
Well, I'm telling you, the special intelligence we had, the people didn't know that.
Right.
I had that to check in.
But the point is in the book. The average reader can read this and say, here are these disparaging remarks about government officials, and the colonel says he got this from the NKVD. He doesn't say he checked on it. He just says he believed the NKVD. Well, that's not good enough.
Well, those are words that maybe my co-writer put. I didn't say that I
Yeah.
believed the NKVD.
Well,
I never in my time believed them
Yeah.
because I always was very careful to check it out.
Well, obviously, if there's ever going to be anybody filled with disinformation, it's going to be the
well,
enemy
unfortunately,
intelligence.
that's the way that. But see, I always checked it out. I had.
But you know
close
what you should have
friends.
said,
I
if
had
you don't
close-
mind my
Yeah, I
criticizing.
had close friends
what
in
you
CIA
should say
also.
is, I listened to the NKVD. I did not believe them. That's not what you said in the book.
No,
and then
I
you
didn't
said,
believe them.
yeah, that you wanted to check on it. You said.
I made no.
Okay.
No evaluation.
And then you should have said in the book, just to reassure us readers and everybody else. I then went to, there was a brigadier general in the Air Force, was a friend of mine. There was a colonel who was stationed such and such, no names. I checked with them. They had had conversations with Twining. They assured me that this in fact happened. You see, that way, I would read this and say this makes
Yes.
sense. But to say that the source for you is simply the NKVD,
Well,
and what it is the kind of remarks
Well,
people
now,
make
I
who
wanna
are
tell you-
enemies.
let me tell you one thing. That
It would be extremely important to verify your story,
Yeah, well, really,
to be able to find
yeah.
the names of these people and contact them.
the names, unfortunately, it's been so many years ago. I don't know. But here's what happened.
But you remembered very clearly what they told you.
The agents themselves.
Yeah, I mean your statements that you have verbatim quotes of Harry Truman and General Twining and others in the White House based on what they told you. So since you remember that very clearly, I'm interested in who these people are so we can contact them.
Yeah. Well.
What would be your sense of, I mean, what did they look like? Let's start with a description.
Well, they look like really. They look like average Americans. You see, there
Well,
was.
did one of them have a mustache? One was 60, one was
There was-
40. I mean, that's...
No, mostly they were almost all, the ones that I dealt with were almost all clean shaven. There was no such thing as beards, mustache, or camouflage.
Just to shift to something else, you talk about in the reverse engineering business that you would take material to a scientist of a company, let's say Bell Labs or something, whatever, and without revealing that this came from a spaceship.
No, I wouldn't take it.
Or you would take material.
It was material that went. It was regular R&D projects that went in. So a lieutenant or an officer never went with those. Those were put in their hands. I don't know how those were sent out. It wasn't my area. Whether they were mailed or handed to somebody. Or in most cases, there was not an officer sent.
Yeah.
The system worked that way.
Yeah.
I didn't go.
Right.
I only went very few times, and most of the time I went to industries like when we went out with MacArthur, at Sperry Ram. The General Trudeau would go, and I'd go with him. So I would go there. Many times Trudeau say, "Disappear, take off, Phil." Do that.
But even more important, the scientists at the company, there's not one name of a scientist who can verify. You see, if anybody said, if you had, I remember Colonel Corso sent in Lieutenant so-and-so. He handed me this fascinating material, reports and so forth. And I remember vividly how I was excited by this, and my name is so-and-so, and I was a research
I
scientist.
never did that.
But you'd have a name of some human being
in most
that would
cases-
that would support your story. See?
In most cases, I didn't have the names. So we're
Well,
doing those days.
there had to be somebody at Sperry Rand who could, or a widow or somebody today who could say, I will never forget the day this material came to us that was so fascinating, and it led to a major breakthrough. I cannot go into what the breakthrough was.
I hope that there was somebody like that, because I never
there
really checked
there
it.
have to be, otherwise the story doesn't hold water.
Well,
there have to be people.
I never checked those.
But see, Colonel, you make claims, in the book,
Yeah.
whoever wrote, this part of it. You say at the end, there comes a time when one can save one's planet, one's species, and the free world, and so forth. These are gigantic claims. No one that I have ever read has made a claim like that, ever. Maybe Jesus Christ made a claim like that. Nobody. And when you make a claim like that, you have to have some names.
I never got involved in that area.
Well, but you see, the problem here then is that the book gives a different tone. The book makes this seem like a single-handed operation on your part.
Oh,
That's
there
what
was
the book
thousands of
does.
people involved.
No, I know, but when you say, I saved the planet, not we.
Well,
I saved the planet, not we.
I hope I didn't say that in the book.
Yes, you
If they
did.
that.
I saved the planet.
Unfortunately, the way it was edited, things like that came out, and they've caused me a lot of difficulty.
Well, Colonel,
I never got the chance to look at the final galley. If I had looked at the final galley, a lot of these things would have been changed in the manner that they were presented.
have you considered writing
Sure.
all of these things out and saying, this is incorrect, this is incorrect,
Sure.
this is correct, this is incorrect?
I'm doing that now.
It should be done.
Not incorrect, but said the wrong way.
Or misleading, whatever.
Misleading.
That this is
because
not.
you see, Birnes has never asked me what you just asked me. How'd you know this? And I've never discussed with
But
him.
these are crucial issues. These are
Yeah,
not.
they are
You see, in UFO.
Those are words that maybe my co-writer put. I didn't say that I believed it in every day. I don't know.